Time to speak to Ben Schmitt. He's a postdoctoral researcher at Harvard University, also a senior fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis. Ben, thanks very much indeed. I mean, this really lays it all very bare to the extent that there was some news that the Italian government was saying to those big energy companies, please don't have this phone call today.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I want to say is that Russia has been weaponizing energy well before this particular crisis on the Ukrainian border has begun with Russia threatening to further invade Ukraine. For the past 6 months or so, Russia has decided to not take its normal market action to further inject gas volumes into their own reserves across the EU. And at the same time they've done that, Vladimir Putin and other senior Russian officials have directly linked that sort of action to say, look, Europe, look, Germany in particular, the Bundesnetzagentur regulator, if you certify Nord Stream 2 quickly, then we will increase gas supplies to Europe to mitigate and make better this crisis. The problem is they've clearly been weaponizing energy in this way by linking further gas supplies to a political outcome. And that is running directly afoul of the July 2016 agreement that the US and Germany had that said that if Russia weaponizes energy, which it is doing right now, Germany will seek sanctions at the EU level to retaliate. And that never happened. And so Germany, in spite of this crisis, needs to already be taking action to stop Nord Stream 2.
Yeah, but as President Joe Biden said just a few days ago, hey, this isn't a one-way street. So what would the effect be on the Russian economy if the Russians were to turn the tap off, which actually some parliamentarians have already been talking about? Presumably, they wouldn't be saying such sensitive things without the say-so from the Kremlin anyway.
That's right. I mean, I think that we've seen multiple senior Biden administration officials rightly say and rightly focus on the need of Europe to locate and lock in emergency, effectively, gas supplies if this gas cutoff took place at a further level than we're already seeing, with Russia not taking market action to bolster European reserves. But we also have to think about this in a multidisciplinary way. Let's remember, Russia currently relies on the Ukrainian gas transit route to get its supplies to Europe where it makes revenue, as Joe Biden pointed out. If Nord Stream 2 comes online, then the Russians no longer have to worry about destabilizing that Ukrainian route. Some of those pipelines sit directly adjacent to the line of contact in Donbass, where your reporter was standing just a few minutes ago. And so if Vladimir Putin has that in his calculus and says, well, look, we still rely on this infrastructure. We have to make that as one part of our calculus on whether or not we invade to undermine our own sales of gas in Western Europe. If Nord Stream 2 comes online or becomes certified, then Russia has the ability to circumvent Ukraine and removes that strategic deterrent. And that's why we've seen this increased call for sanctions to stop Nord Stream 2 now as a deterrent, not because of a punitive or punishing measure, but rather as a physical infrastructure deterrent on further Russian aggression towards Ukraine.
Ben, where do you think the other most important sanctions could be placed? I mean, there seems to be disagreement again between Western nations about whether the SWIFT international banking transfer system, the financial transfer system, should be used as a way to exclude Russia from that. People are talking about individual sanctions. President Biden, Boris Johnson, again, the UK Prime Minister, said that they could personally sanction Vladimir Putin. They've been talking about sanctioning Vladimir Putin's mistress.
Well, look, I think that the talk of all of these sort of economic sanctions needs to be on the table. There's been talk of supply chain limitations, export controls from the United States that the White House talked about yesterday. I think that's really important and good in terms of critical technologies and critical materials that can cause the Russian economy to think twice about supporting such a further invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin. But we also need to look at the strategic corruption element of this. We need to look at all of the enablers. And I think that a big aspect of this needs to be coming to a consensus, not only to go after sanctions on key Russian oligarchs and their assets abroad, right? Because the Russians currently have a class of oligarchs that like to store their wealth and like to have summer homes abroad and all of these sort of things. Making sure that that's on the table could allow for a high-level political calculus change in the Kremlin. But at the same time, there needs to be a transatlantic consensus that no, former officials, period, for Western governments cannot step out of office and become highly paid leaders on the boards of Russian state-owned enterprises. We're looking at people like Gerhard Schroeder, the former Chancellor of Germany, the former Foreign Minister of Austria, Karen Kneissl, serving on the board of Rosneft, and the former French Prime Minister François Fillon, serving on a Russian-backed oil and gas trading board. These sort of practices undermine transatlantic resolve, both at a strategic level and at a policy level, in terms of our transatlantic consensus on how to respond to Russian aggressive behaviors. And so, again, all of these taken together, where we're talking about energy sanctions, financial sanctions, oligarch sanctions, pushing back on Russian strategic corruption, need to be looked at in a multidisciplinary way, because Vladimir Putin and other authoritarian nations around the world often hybridize their threats and draw upon each of these sectors. And we need to be clear that all of these are on the table, especially as you pointed out earlier in this broadcast, if we're not looking at putting troops on the ground from NATO inside of Ukraine to protect it.
Ben, you're talking about a very coordinated approach. That's going to be interesting to see if it could actually happen. Really, really appreciate it. Ben Schmitt in Massachusetts.